An old video of mine got a comment, The Shallow Side of BookTube, and I want to talk about it. That video caused a bit of drama for me, but revisiting it 6 years later is amazing. I'm going to link to Dustin's brilliant comment, and I'm going to link to his channel. It's amazing clicking on the booktubers that commented on this post to see they quit. Their channels are dead. That's being honest. So let's look back. Let's go back and reevaluate that video, see if things have changed, see what's changed, what hasn't changed, why I stopped making a lot of book content, and just go into it. And I'm also holding a mirror up to myself in this video. I'm looking at myself square in the eye and saying, Will, you fell into that trap. So like, sub, share this video, and tell me what you think in the comments below. Memberships and Patreon is also available. Watching the video I made 6 years ago was The Shallow Side of BookTube was like watching a very weird mirror. A person that was you, that isn't you now, that's fundamentally changed from that point. I'm not who I was when I made that video. I'm not who I was when I made a video last year. And ultimately, it's very interesting watching the disconnect and strangeness that I felt with it. There was a wave of nostalgia and frustration, but also remembering shooting that video on the fly, thinking I'm freezing my butt off, and why did I decide to walk 5 miles in this weather? That's a big takeaway from that video, but it was a moment of self-awareness for me. It held a mirror up to our habits. Endless book hauls, over-the-top TBRs, and formulaic content. At the time, it got a very interesting reaction. A good percentage of people really liked that video. And there was a good percentage that didn't. The drama that followed that video was quite fascinating, to say the least, on the subject. And it's weird looking at that video now. There was a bit of drama that followed that video. And it's strange when I watch it back. Also, fluffy beard moment, but there we go. It felt like looking in a time capsule. It feels like looking at that weird time capsule that never truly closed because it never changed. And that's what my big takeaway from it was. Thanks to Dustin and his brilliant comment, which I will read out for you now. It's amazing clicking on booktubers that commented on this post only to see they quit. Their channels are dead. And there is a weird sense of loss to that. A lot of people I know and still genuinely miss just vanished one day, stopped making content, disappeared, and so on. It's one thing that really did stand out when rewatching it was the realization that the commentary in this video still rings true. Many issues it highlights, like the obsession with consumerism over actual reading, or the lack of diversity in content or opinion, remains as entrenched today as it did back then. Don't get me wrong, book hauls, TBRs, and wrap-ups are still the bread and butter of BookTube, predominantly. While there's nothing inherently wrong with those formats, they exist for a reason. The algorithm likes them mostly. They often come across as stale and uninspired when repeated ad nauseum. And that kind of gets really old. I'm never going to watch your reading blogs. I'm sorry, I'm just not. What's more disheartening is the creative burnout that video allures to. Like, looking back, I was creatively burnt out. There's a reason I did fall into this trap myself. It was easy content with guaranteed numbers and guaranteed views and guaranteed interaction. And the creators that inspired that video, many of them are gone. Many of the people mentioned in the comments of this, and I mean, who inspired it, it's satire, they just disappeared, stopped making content entirely. Others have moved on to different platforms or disappeared quietly, leaving behind a sense of loss. And like I said, people I genuinely miss. Wild Reads, where are you? You were fabulous. Has BookTok changed anything? BookTok is often hailed as a fresh new face of the book community. Some ways it is. The platform has brought books to a younger audience and made reading look cool again. But for all its glossy aesthetic appeal, it suffers from the same core problems. Trends dominate everything. leaving little room for nuance or individuality. Viral books get really old really fast, and there's only so many videos I can see of people gushing about the fourth wing, and before I just switch off. Then honestly, it just overshadows brilliant books that are lesser known. And you can always tell when publishers are having a sale for books that didn't meet sale expectations. They churn them out on BookTok. Ironically, though, BookTok sales don't necessarily count towards sales of the book itself, which is quite an interesting little sidestep there. The aesthetic focus on BookTok, with its dramatic videos and heavily curated bookshelves, feels more like an extreme version of BookTube, and the culture that I critiqued in that video. It's about appearances, not depth. And I say that, there are some phenomenal BookTok people. I want to say that, but many of them are just overshadowed by these creators. The circle of overhyped books, followed by the inherent backlash, mirrors BookTube's old habits, but on a faster, more relentless, aggressive scale. And what about podcasts, you ask? Podcasts often offered hope as an alternative space for thoughtful, long-form discussions, and while there are plenty of amazing podcasts out there, many have fallen into the same traps, chasing popular trends, avoiding difficult or controversial topics/books, and sticking to surface-level critique. Like BookTube and BookTok, podcasts are often more concerned with what's hot right now than exploring literature and its enduring value. And many of them function like a Ponzi scheme, only really giving it voice to friends and people they know and promoting each other's own self-published books. Certain Irish woman, I'm looking at you. It was strange because I love podcasts mostly, but for every good podcast I've found, there are hundreds, if not thousands, that are just generic noise in the background. Same with BookTube, same with BookTok, same with this stale regurgitation of content. Reflecting on that video, and the state of the broader bookish landscape today, it's clear that the root of the problem isn't just the creators. And I will say that. It's the platforms themselves. Algorithms reward predictability. They favour creators who churn out similar content consistently, leaving little room for experimentation or just bringing something random out. The pressure to perform is another factor. The video's skeptical take on BookTube's obsession with consumerism, buying books just to show them off, still hits home. For many creators, the endless cycle of book hauls and reviews isn't just a creative rut, it's a survival mechanism. To stay popular, to stay in an algorithm, to stay being seen. The pressures has likely contributed to the exodus of many of the voices that once made some really interesting and fun content. Looking back on the conversation, it sparked both good and bad. One thing is clear, we need to embrace authenticity. The book community has potential to be so much more than it currently is, but it requires a shift in priorities. It's not about abandoning TBRs or halls entirely, it's about creating a space for deeper, more meaningful conversation. There's a world of literature beyond the algorithm picks. Let's discover those older books, overlooked books that deserve a second look, books that didn't necessarily hit those sales targets. Instead of chasing the latest viral book, creators should focus on sharing their unique reading journeys. Let's be real. There is a wealth of books that people read that they don't talk about because they know they won't get clicks. And maybe if we pushed the way the content is handled, it would tweak the algorithm, because a lot of these platforms, the algorithm is genuinely just moved around and put in different places. And there is a massive divide between BookTube, BookTok, and podcasts. A lot of these groups hate each other. BookTube and BookTok especially are notorious for just being catty and jealous of each other. So why not cross paths? Why not create something together? Why not do that? You can span both, you can create it. Podcast, do some crossover. Have fun. And it might revitalize a community that's already fragmented and already like a bunch of teenage girls in high school sitting at the popular table. And challenging the algorithm. It's hard, but the more creators push against the algorithmic tide, the more room there is for other voices and opinions to flourish. I look back at that video with a sense of cringe, but also a sense of almost a cautionary tale. Like, what I said there is still as poignant today as it was when I first uploaded it, which says a lot about the community's resistance to change. If you want content, we need to stop repeating old patterns, start taking risk. Let's create spaces where the love of book takes precedence over aesthetics, trends, and algorithms. There's a reason I walked away from BookTube. There is a reason I did it for my own well-being, and ultimately the heart of the bookish community has always been its people. If you can rediscover the joy and the authenticity that made a golden era and the early days of book content online so much fun, there's honestly just hope for the future. But I do wonder what should happen. The fact that stuff hasn't changed, the fact that things haven't moved on from that is very telling. The fact that the critique still stands, and the fact that it's all the same patterns, the same aesthetic. When I see people commenting on videos or about people saying they only love the aesthetic and only really watch them because they're pretty, there's a problem. Maybe part of the blame is on the audience as well, because people's attention spans does not exist. There's a whole generation of people that struggle to watch movies. So God knows how how TikTok and Shorts and Reels has affected the way we process things. Maybe it's time for change. And to the people that are not here anymore, the people that vanished, that I'd loved, I hope you're doing well. I hope you guys have a wonderful Christmas. And I know you won't see this video, but thank you for being a part of that formative journey for me when I first started this journey myself.